Hey everyone, welcome back. Happy New Year. And let's talk about something that I was just talking to a mom about, I believe it was Monday, first day back. And she was super frustrated because, like so many moms that I work with, her child had been told, and she had been told that her child was just a weak learner. And she'd been told that for years. And they had been everywhere and were just super frustrated because she knew deep down something more was actually going on. And so if you're in a situation where you have this instinct, and I'll be talking more about that this week, that something is wrong, something is not right, that your child is struggling more than they should be, and you just keep being told everything's fine, then this is for you. So it really is this, what I'm going to be talking about and getting into a little bit in this video is key to knowing what's really going on and understanding what's really beneath the weak learner, or someone who's weak at reading but doesn't actually fit the criteria. And I just want to start off by saying, in my opinion, there is no such thing as weak learners. There's a reason that hasn't been identified. It might not fit the criteria for a diagnosis, but there is absolutely a reason. And I firmly believe there is no such thing as weak learners. There are only weak connections. So let me say that again. There is no such thing as weak learners. There are only weak connections. And if it's not severe enough, those kids are going to slip through the cracks. And more than ever, we're seeing that for two reasons. Number one, kids can slip through the cracks whenever they're in a situation where they're in a school. It doesn't seem to matter if I talk to parents from the UK, the US, Canada, Australia, or wherever, and the schools are filled, so to speak, and underfunded. And so they really don't want to screen for kids in terms of having learning difficulties and so forth, unless it's really serious. And unfortunately, what has to be considered serious is pretty insane. And they don't screen for that until grade 4. And oftentimes parents have to even fight at grade 4 to be like, something is wrong. So you don't want to wait that long. You want to dig deeper sooner to get on top of it, because what can start off as it's weak at first can become exasperated if you don't get on top of it, sooner than later, so to speak. So it can be really frustrating when you know something is up and you're just being told, well, they're just weak. And the thing that a few moms have said to me is, I'm so sick of hearing, but she's such a hard worker, or he's such a hard worker. And they're like, yeah, that's great and all, but how is that going to help my child in terms of in terms of addressing what is really going on? And a lot of these parents have gone to the psychologist, done the psychoed evaluations, and they just don't fit the criteria for a diagnosis. So they've tried everything, they've been everywhere, and they know something is wrong deep down. And what's interesting is when we screen these kids, when either I work with people obviously virtually, most of my clients are all over the world, or even if I see them in clinic, they almost always have multiple areas of the brain that are underdeveloped, show signs of weak connections, retained primitive reflexes, brain imbalance, poor cerebellum development. And what I find really frustrating is these weak learners can go two ways if it doesn't actually get correctly addressed. Number one, they will be really hard workers. They will turn into, they'll really work hard in school, and the teachers might love them because they're such hard workers, even if they are a C+ student. Or they might become the adult who just burns the candle at both ends and works really hard on that overachiever, because it affects your self-esteem, and they start to, as adults, feel like they have to prove themselves constantly, and they're just used to having to work that hard. And that, to me, is no way to live whenever there's another solution. And then, unfortunately, the other thing we see, which is when a lot of moms start to contact me, is they've had maybe their son is a weak, a woman will call me and say, my son has always been a weak learner. Now he's in grade 9 and he's absolutely drowning and he's totally discouraged and he hates school, and he really started hating school the last few years, and now it's just gotten worse. And these are the kids that might limit themselves. They try to avoid anything that's going to make them take a risk, because then, they have to deal with that sense of failure. They just really think they're not school, them in school, they're just not cut out for it. So bottom line is whether it's severe or not. So whether it's a true learning disability or whether it's just a weakness, what I call a learning glitch as opposed to a learning disability, there are poor connections. And yes, for sure, the kids who are just weak have less poor connections, if you will, compared to the kids who are severe and have a whole bunch of, weaknesses and areas of underdevelopment and so forth. But either way, these kids need help strengthening those connections. Otherwise, they are going to stay where they are. So what I really want to stress is not saying don't get a diagnosis, but if you don't get a diagnosis and are told everything's fine, but deep down, my kid is struggling way more than they need to be, there are things that can be done. And, focus more on the skills. Think about what is my child really struggling with, as opposed to looking for like a magic label. And I'm not trying to sound derogatory when I refer to diagnosis, but sometimes we get obsessed with searching for that label because we think that's going to provide all the answers, and it's not. Look at the skills. What are they weak in? Because that is the area of the brain. The skills that they're weak in means that there's areas of the brain connected to those skills that are weak and need to be strengthened. It really is as simple as that. So it really they don't have to meet a criteria to get the help they need or to move forward and so forth. And again, I just want to stress, there is no such thing. Your child is not a weak learner. There are only weak connections. So let me know in the comments below, what skills does your child have trouble with? What have you been told they're a weak learner? Have you been told they don't meet the criteria? All that type of stuff. And simple exercises that you can do at home. It's not full on brain training, but it's definitely a starting point. If your child is a weak learner, is you really want to start stimulating all sides of the brain, if you will, and so forth. And some really simple ways to do that are crossover, cross-lateral exercises, dance. If you have a son that is not into dance, that's understandable. A lot of boys aren't. So martial arts is really good because it's ultimately the body that builds the brain. So you want to be doing things like that. Core exercises. Yes, the core is extremely important for cognition, reading, all that type of stuff. Core stability is key. Brain games and so forth. So those are some areas that you can start in terms of improving that. And then, if you are interested in knowing more about my program, want to book a clarity call, do that. I will post a link for that in the comments below. Or if you're watching this on Instagram, you can just hop to the link in my bio and book a call. And let me know in the comments below, what is your child struggling with? What have you been told in terms of, don't worry about it. Your child's just a weak learner. So thanks for watching, everyone. Until next time.